Good deal. Let's go to the word. That's what you come for, right? Amen. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Going to begin reading at verse number 1. It says this boasting will do no good, but I must go on. I will reluctantly tell about visions and revelations from the Lord. I was caught up in the third heaven 14 years ago. Whether I was in my body or out of my body, I don't know. Only God knows. Yes, only God knows whether I was in my body or outside of my body. But I do know that I was caught up to paradise, and I heard things so astounding that they cannot be expressed in words, things no human is allowed to tell. That experience is worth boasting about, but I'm not going to do it. I will boast only about my weaknesses. If I wanted to boast, I would be no fool in doing so because I would be telling the truth. But I won't do it because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message, even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God. So, to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness." So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, the hardships, the persecutions and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then am I strong. You may be seated. I want to use for a subject this morning, from pleading to praising. From pleading to praising. One question that I often get asked for anybody that decides to embark upon a spiritual journey and trying to change their lives for the better is, how can I tell when my faith is growing? Here is the thing. When you make a conscious decision to change your life for the better, when you decide that where you are in life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even physically, no longer serves the best version of you, life often takes a shift. Hear me. Anytime that you are around people, places, or things that no longer serve your higher good, and you decide that this ain't for me no more, life will take a shift. The thing about that is, in order for you to grow, you're going to have to go through some things. Your growth, that shifting that happens in your life, isn't always going to be favorable or comfortable for you. I'm going to say that again for everybody that often gets complacent. The things that you will have to go through that will give you the growth that you say you want are not always going to be pleasant. And it's okay. Because here is the thing that happens to most of us. When God starts challenging us in every area of our lives, and He will, when He starts challenging us, most of us don't want to be challenged. And as a result of us not wanting to be challenged in our health, in our wealth, in our families, in our relationships, in our bodies, we tend to say, I don't want that. Whatever I asked you for, I don't want it no more. Because we would rather remain comfortable than to be challenged. I got a news flash for some of you. Whether or not you decide that you want to be challenged doesn't mean a thing. Because life is going to life regardless. And what you can do about lifing is have a different perspective and know that it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. When you think that your challenge is happening to you, you become a victim of your circumstance. As a victim, you want to be pitied. As a victim, you want people to feel sorry for you. But when you understand that it is not happening to you, that is happening for you, you don't care who pities you. You don't care who feels sorry for you, because you understand that it all works together for your good. Here's what happens to us, especially those who have grown up in the church. We have been programmed in the church into believing that anytime we go through something difficult, anytime that we go through something that causes us to cry a little tear, we have been programmed into believing that we are out of the will of God. We have been programmed into believing that we have messed up somewhere. It's because I didn't go to church last Sunday that God is getting me. It's because I got out of the choir that God don't like me no more. Paul said this to the Roman church. He said, I don't care what y'all say. I realize that it ain't nothing that can keep God from loving me. There is nothing that will separate me from the love of God. Tribulation, distress, persecution, nakedness, peril, or sword. None of these things can separate God from me. But because we've been programmed into thinking that we've upset God, we tend to forfeit our growth, forfeit our change, and we just sit back in that place of comfort and say, I guess life is just meant for me to live it like this. I guess I'm not supposed to have what everybody else have. I guess I'm not supposed to do what everybody else is doing. I guess I'm not supposed to be all that I can be because God must be mad at me. Not so. Not so. Your faith is a seed. And in order for you to change, in order for you to grow, your faith has to be challenged. Your faith, when you say, God, I know that there is more for me. I know that there is something else I'm supposed to be doing. I know that there are other people that I'm supposed to be meeting. How did I get here? And when you make that conscious decision to say, God, I want to change, everything in your life starts working together to make that change come to pass. Everything. So here's what happens. In order for God to grow your faith, especially in the area where you want to see the biggest change, in order for your faith to be grown, it's like a seed that's been put in the ground. Have you ever seen a seed grow in the light? Seeds start their growth in darkness. Every seed initiates the growth process under the dirt. That means that when life starts giving you dirt, all the lies, the deceptions, the folk walking out on you, the physical problems, the emotional instability, the mental stress, when life starts lifing and you say, I can't take no more, I'm sick of this, I might as well end it, I don't want no more. That is nothing but dirt that's causing your faith seed to grow. The germination of any seed starts under the ground. And when everybody gets to see what has been going on with you, everybody gets to see the ones that said you would never make it, that you would never come out of this, that you were destined to fail. When you break through the challenges and break through the dirt, that's when you sit back and say, God, I thank you. It didn't happen to me. It happened. But because we want pity, we don't realize what's happening. The moment that you accept every challenge as dirt that's been put on you, not to bury you, but to cause you to bloom, you understand and you say, God, if this is what it takes for me to be who I need to be, do what I need to do, have what I need to have, bring it on. Because I've not been buried, I've been conditioned to bloom. So every challenge that you encounter has been so designed by God for you. Hear me. Every challenge that you encounter has been signed by God to show up at your address, your street, your house, your relationship, your body, so that you can bloom. Let me see. So here's a seed. Here's a somebody come help me. Come help me. Yes, ma'am. So here's your seed right here. Okay? This is a seed. The thing about it is you don't take much faith. The Bible says that every man has been given, every one of us has been given the measure of faith. That means that you came into this world with all the faith that you need. That's a good spot to praise God. You came into this world with all the faith that you need. Your job is to grow the faith that's already been put in you. So every time that you say, God, I want more. Every time you say, God, make me better. Every time things, it's like you taking this seed. Just hold your hand up. This is the seed. And the seed is already in the ground. So when you start praying and you say, God, I really want more money. God, I want better opportunities. God, I want a better relationship. I want a healthy relationship. He starts saying, all right, well, I know that on March the 29th, you can handle this without going crazy. So he starts putting this right over the seed. And then he says on July 15th, there's something else I know that you can handle. I'm going to give you time to get over this. But I'm going to give you this because by then you'll be able to handle it because you got over this. Then come August, here comes another problem, financial problem. He says, well, I know I gave you a little financial problem back in March, the end of March. Remember that? And you didn't think you were going to get out of that. You were wondering how your rent was going to get paid. You were wondering how your bills were going to get paid. And you said, God, I can't take this no more. I'm tired of struggling. And I showed up and showed out for you. Remember that? He says, well, here's something else. Here's something now that I know that you can handle because you handled that and you didn't lose your mind. You didn't go crazy. I know you thought you were, but you didn't go crazy. So here's something else. So God keeps piling it on. And you say, God, I can't take no more. But all the while, you're trying to break through the ground. And it's not until you laying down right now. But guess what? The more dirt, it ain't nothing but nutrient-rich soil. Every one of your problems has been designed as nutrient-rich dirt that's been already pre-planned, pre-programmed, predetermined, preordained for you to make it. And then when you start standing up, it just goes up like this. And before you know it, folk are looking at you and saying, I didn't know you were going to do all that. I didn't know you were going to survive that. You ought to clap your hands and give God praise for all that you made it through. So you look at somebody and say, stop complaining. Stop complaining. It's not happening to you. You want to lay down because you think God done buried you under stuff. God ain't burying you. He's trying to cause you to bloom. He needs for folk to see that you are a survivor. He needs for folk to see that you are an overcomer. Look at somebody and say, I'm about to bloom. Sitting up, telling folk what you can't handle, what you can't make it through. Let me try to explain it another way. So anytime you want change, hear me, put this in your phone so you won't think that you're the only person in the world no more, okay? Write it down, put it on your hand. If you got a marker, write it on your hand. Change of any kind is always frightening. Change of any kind is always frightening. But if you are not challenged, you don't change. In order for you to be, to do, to have more than what you have going on right now, there has to be a challenge to initiate the change. I'm scared to start my own business. I'm sure everybody that started a business was scared. I'm scared to buy this house. Everybody that bought a house is scared. Doctor gave me a bad report. I'm scared. I'm sure that everybody that ever got a bad report from the doctor is scared. I don't want to be by myself. I'm scared. I don't want to be married. I'm scared. You see how fear works? Everybody that has the privilege to inhale and exhale have been scared of something. You are not the only one that's going through stuff that scares you. The difference in you who remains afraid and those who said, I don't care what happens. I know what God has said to me. I know that I have dreams and visions and goals. I know I have hopes, and I don't care what happens. I know God has got me. That's the difference. It's the mindset. And when you know that in just a little while, you're going to break through the challenge. Do me a favor. Tap somebody and say, did you hear what he just said? He said, in just a little while, you're going to break through. In just a little while, all that you've been going through, you about to break through. And when folks see you bloom, baby, you better bloom, baby, bloom. You better shine. Don't you feel bad for getting through all the hell you got through? Don't you feel bad about making it through everything that you made it through? Bloom, baby. God will only give you what you can handle. That's why Paul said, again to the Roman church. Paul had to keep talking to them Roman folk because they tried to make him feel some kind of way about his God. He said, listen, I know that no matter what y'all try to do to me, it all works together for my good. You can try to keep me from blooming if you want to. I just know that I'm going to bloom even brighter. There's a sprinkle of miracle grow on somebody. Somebody got some miracle grow. Yeah. So when you overcome what you've been dealing with, you go from pleading to praising. It's all about your perspective. It's all about your perspective. It's all about your perspective. This is why you cannot compare yourself with anybody. When folks say, child, I don't know how you going through that. I don't know how you going to deal with that. They don't understand the how. Because it ain't theirs to go through. It ain't theirs to go through. It ain't theirs to go through. So when you allow folk who compare themselves to you to talk you out of dealing with the dirt and the challenges, you mess yourself up. I would just leave. Try it. I just tell them, give them a piece of try it. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Guess what? You ain't me. So you cannot compare, nor can you compete with everybody else when you're trying to grow. So let's take a look. Look at what Paul said. Look at what Paul said. Paul says, I've had some wonderful experiences with God. Some that's so mind-blowing that it would cause your toenails to curl. I could boast and brag about them if I chose to. Paul was crazy. You know, Paul said, if look at the way it read, because The whole time he was really boasting and bragging about what he was doing. I ain't gonna boast about it, but I done had some experiences. I ain't gonna boast about it, but I done been up to heaven. I ain't gonna boast about it, but I've been told stuff that ain't nobody ever been. I ain't gonna boast. You're boasting. However, Paul said this, I know sometimes things can get a little out of hand in me. I know sometimes things can get to the place where I feel like I've arrived. But because I know that I want to forever grow, because I know I want to continue to evolve in my relationship and in my faith, God has given me a challenge that wrecks my nerves every time it shows up. When I start talking about, child, you ain't got it like me, God sends the challenge. When he says, when you start judging folk and looking at folk that haven't got what you got, God sends the challenge. And Paul says every time he sends it, he said, I have prayed 3 times for God, pleading, God, take it away, take it away. But then I think about something. I remember I asked God to grow me in that area. I remember I asked God to change me. So then the dirt comes, the lies come, the deception comes, the debt comes, the broken relationships come, the friends walking out come, and I realize that every time I would plead to God, stop it, it don't feel good, he would say something like this, my grace is greater than your challenge. What you complaining about? I told you I'd always be with you. I told you I'd always make a way. I told you I'd always show up. All you got to do is ask. I told you that I would never leave you nor forsake you. Why are you worrying about it? My grace is greater than your challenge. Then Paul says I had to rethink that thing. I had to rethink it. And then I realized that every time I am challenged, God proves himself to me again. And I realized that I've left a trail because I can't talk about my challenges without talking about my God. So there's a trail. There's a trail. You know what blows my mind about church folk? Every time you go through something, you act like it's the first time you've been through something. You act like it's the very first time that you ever been through anything. Paul says, I realize that in my weakest times, God shows up the most. So there's a trail, a trail. Paul says, I left a trail. And back when I was going through that, he showed up. And back when I was going through that, he showed up. When I was going through that, he shows up. He go through that, he shows up. He go through this, he shows up. I've been through that, and he shows up, which means that every time he shows up, I get stronger, I get better, I get wiser, and now I'm the evidence of God's grace. Do you know that you are the evidence? Look back over your life. The old folks used to say it like this, my soul looks back and wonders how I made it over. Look back over your life. Look at all the stuff you done made it through that you said back then that you didn't know how you got through it, that you didn't think you were going to survive it. Look back over your life. Paul said, look, before I knew it, I went from pleading to praising. Because at the end of every day, at the end of the day, I take pleasure in all I went through. I get happy thinking about my weaknesses. I get happy thinking about my problems. I get happy thinking about the folk who have done me wrong. I get happy thinking about the bad doctor's report. I get happy thinking because in my weakness, God shows up as strength and power. So I really don't have a story to tell you. All I got is left is a testimony to talk about how good my God is. I ain't got a story. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. All I want you to understand that God has been better to me than I've been to myself. I realize that I ain't got to complain about my problem. I simply say the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. We ain't got time to talk about what I've been through because the Lord is my light and my salvation. Ain't got to worry about all that. Do you know we sit together over a cup of coffee, cup of tea? I ain't got no story to tell you. I don't need you to feel sorry for me. The fact that I'm still here. Look, y'all got your family and friends here today. Look at your family and your friends and say, I ain't got no sad story to tell you. The fact that I'm still here is the testimony that God is good. The fact that I'm still here. Y'all stand, I'm finished. Stop your pleading and start your praising. God been too good. He been too good. Let the dirt come, because in just a little while, you gonna bloom if you faint not. You gonna bloom. And can I just tell some of you something? You showed up at the right church, at the right day, at the right time for me to tell you that you are about to bloom. This week is going to be a week of blooming for so many of you. That's a good place for you to confirm it. I know God has been speaking to some of you, and all I did was just confirm the fact that everything you've been hearing over the last few weeks, the last few months, you are getting ready to bloom. Doors of the church are open.